Hello and welcome to another video. In this one we're going to be talking about entry points in Python and how you can use them to build a plugin system. And yeah, without a further ado, let's jump into that. Okay, so for this we're going to be making a very simple, silly Hello World program, and then I'm going to be building some plugins for that Hello World program. And we're going to be doing this using setuptools to manage our entry points. There are other programs which do this as well, or other libraries, but we're just going to be using the boring old vanilla setuptools ones. So let's start by making a Hello World project, and we're going to just do this all in setup.py for today. And so we're going to do from setuptools import setup. We're going to build our setuptools metadata. And name equals hello world, and version equals 1. And we're going to set up a few entry points here. So this is the first usage of entry points. The way that console scripts in Python are set up is via entry points. And so we're going to do entry points equals console scripts. And for that console script, we're going to make one hello world entry, and the values for console scripts is a list of strings, and those strings are module name and then an optional colon followed by an attribute name. The attribute name is optional. Sometimes plugins don't need a particular attribute, they just need a module. But in the case of console scripts, the attribute name I believe is required. I've never done it without it. So we're gonna say hello world as our module. This is going to be our module, and main is going to be the function that we're going to use here. And so if we make hello world.py and we define main, and just put in our boilerplate code here, exit main. Oh boy. Turn 0, print hello world. So this is just our very simple Hello World program, and we've packaged it with a console script here. And so if we take this, virtualenv, and pip install this library. I'm going to install it editable because it's going to be easier to work on that way. And we have a syntax error. Entry point must be name equals module attributes. Oh, we forgot the name for it, of course. Yes, that's the third component that a entry point has, is it has a name. And in the names for console scripts, the name is the program name that you'll get out at the end. Completely forgot that. That part's very important. Okay, so let's install this again. Okay, cool. We've installed this package, and you'll see inside of our bin directory, it has magically made a little Hello World program. If we look at the contents of that, it has a little bit of extra code in here. We'll actually get to this later using importlib.metadata. But it iterates through the entry points and finds an entry point that is the script for Hello World that's a console script called Hello World, and then it'll run that program. So if we vm bin Hello World, it runs our code here, and if we put a bang here, you'll see that it's reflected there immediately. Okay, but that's the first entry point that you'll see, and probably the most common one that you'll ever implement, which is one for a console script. But we want to go one step further and implement our own plugin system for this little Hello World program. And so we're going to define our own entry points here. And it's usually a good idea to name your entry point after the program you're creating plugins for. And so in this case, we're going to be creating a plugin for our Hello World program. So I'm going to call this Hello World.output. I usually, use Hello World and then whatever thing it's going to do. So if I were making, if I were designing Flake8's plugin system, I might say, Flake8.outputter or something like that. And for our, for our plugins, we're going to give them names, but only so they can be selected on the command line. So let's just give this one, this will be the default outputter, and that'll be Hello World, default output. Hello World, we gotta spell this correctly. The other interesting thing about entry points is you have to reinstall anytime you change these because they're part of the packaging metadata. So we're gonna do pip install -e dot again to refresh that, and we need to actually define this output here. So we're going to make our own default output function, and we're just going to make this take in a string and return no value. So output and stir and do nothing. And our default output, or our default outputter is just going to print that output. And we're going to change this code here to find our output and then output it. But we want a way to select our individual plugins. So we're going to import argparse, and we're going to do parser equals argparse. Argparse.argument parser. Parser.add argument. And we're going to do outputter. And we're going to default that to default. And we'll use this to look up our different output strategies later. Args equals parser.parse args. Okay, so now we need to tap into importlib metadata in order to read these entry points at runtime. And let me actually just bring up the docs for importlib metadata so you can see that. And importlib metadata is a new module in Python 3.8. However, there is this backport PyPI package for it as well. So you can use it in older versions of Python without worrying about that. There's a little pattern to pick the version that you want, and we actually saw that earlier in this little script here, where you can conditionally try and import importlib.metadata, but otherwise, try and get it from the backport package or from package resources, which is the old way to do entry points. But yeah, we're gonna look at this here now. The API that I believe we need to look for is the entry points API, and we're going to be looking for entry point instances. So we open up our interpreter here, we can import importlib.metadata, and if we look at importlib.metadata.entrypoints, it's going to give us a big dictionary which has all sorts of different things in here. Fortunately, it's keyed by the type of entry point that we want, so we can actually look for our entry point type specifically. Hello world dot output, and you'll see in here we got a single entry point back that matches our default entry point, and we can access that. If we access 0, we can actually do .load, and it will import this module and grab this attribute for us. You can see after we've called .load, it's given us a reference to this default output here. So I'm going to take all of this and put it all together and give ourselves an outputter dictionary. Outputters equals import importlib.metadata. Outputters equals, we're going to make a dictionary, and we're going to grab the name and use that as the key. So entrypoints.name to entrypoints. Well, we'll just map it to entry point. For entry points in importlib.metadata.entrypoints, and we're going to key into it with our hello world.output. Hello world.output. Just barely fits on one line. Okay, but this will give us a mapping from name to entry point. And to grab our outputter out of this, we're going to do outputters dot outputters bracket args dot outputter. This will give us access to that entry point, and then we're going to do load. So outputter equals this, and then finally we're going to call the outputter with our string here, hello world. So this is kind of our like plug-in glue code to find the specific outputter, and then we're just going to call it down here. And you'll see after I do all of that, function is not subscriptable. Oh, right. I need to actually call entry points. In the old package resources API, you didn't need to do that. It would, it was a module level dictionary. We need to call that here. But anyway, you can see here that it grabs that particular outputter and prints hello world because we defined our own default outputter. And if we instead do, outputter what, you'll see we get an error here. You would probably, produce a better error message saying like that outputter is not available. You want one of these ones. We can actually do that now. So we do this, try accept key error, print outputter, outputter is not available. And you would probably put this to standard error, file equals sys.standard error. Available outputters is outputters. And then we'll return 1 because it's an error case. So this will allow us to print the unknown ones. Oops, we forgot to import sys. And we should also put this to standard error as well. Oh, it doesn't fit on one line now. Outputters s equals join sorted outputters. We put this in here. Outputters s. Okay, here. So outputter wat is not available. Available outputters default. Cool. So we've built our basic skeleton for a program, and now let's talk about how we would build another library that implements their own specialized outputter. So to do that, oops, my keyboard. To do that, we're going to make a Hello World plugin. So let's make their Hello World JSON. So maybe this is a JSON outputter, a plugin for the Hello World program. And oops, Hello World JSON. And we're going to start by making a setup.py as well. From setuptools, import setup name equals Hello World JSON. Equals 1. And we're again going to do entry points here. But we don't have to do the console script entry point. That's provided by the program we're plugging into. The only plugin that we have to do here is the Hello World output plugin. Hello World.output. And we're going to have a JSON outputter for Hello World. And that's going to use a function in Hello World JSON called, I don't know, JSON output. And that's our setuptools metadata, the bare minimum we need. If we cd into Hello World JSON, we're going to make our Hello World JSON.py, and we're going to implement our JSON output function. We're just going to take output as a string and return none. And maybe this just, I don't know, print json.dumps output. Or let's, I don't know, output : this. Give it a little bit better of an API. My parentheses match up? They do. Okay, so this is all this little package does here. Oh, we also, I forgot to actually include pi modules equals hello world JSON, and I realize there is a typo right here, so we'll fix that as well. But I forgot to put this in the other one, but because we're using editable installs, it kind of cheated around that a little bit. But anyway, this is our very, very simple package, which is just going to provide a JSON outputter. If we cd into Hello World now, and we pip install editably Hello World JSON, we'll install this other package. And of course, I have a syntax error in setup.py. I forgot a comma here. I forgot a curly brace. Where? Oh no. Where is it? Closing curly brace does not match opening parentheses. Oh, this is a curly brace for some reason. Cool, so we've editably installed that, and now if we do Hello World output JSON, we're calling our specialized plugin here, which is pretty cool. And you can see, you know, if we do WAD again, it now knows that there are two different plugins that are, or two different outputters available. But that's kind of the basics of this. And of course, you can imagine this getting more and more complicated. But it's essentially just like look up and import the metadata at runtime. And this will use the installation metadata. You can actually look at how that installation metadata looks by looking inside this egginfo directory. Sometimes it'll be called distinfo, depending on whether wheel was the installer or setuptools. But you'll see there's this entrypoints.txt, and it's actually a little ini file, which has essentially the same data as our setup.py. But anyway, hopefully this was helpful. It's a little bit complicated. Feel free to go back and pause at different parts if you know this was too much all at once. But I'll leave this code up at the end so you can check that as well. But if you have additional things you want me to explain, leave a comment below or reach out to me on the various platforms. But thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.